Hello, my name is Nick Carroll, and this is part two of my Hangout series. I have many more tips in this video, so without further ado, let's get started. I'd like to first start out by letting you know that over the last couple months since I've made the previous video, part one essentially, of this multi-part series, that I had watched a number of other videos made by other uh, Hangout or video casters or podcasters, etc. And I'd sort of compiled a list of more tips that I have culled from these people, and in particular, I'm going to mention two because a lot of what they mentioned really struck out as relevant to what I do on a daily or weekly basis when I create video or hang out with others or participate in other podcasts. So I'm going to mention those people here. Ronnie Benser from thehangouthelper.com. He's known as the Hangout Helper, and he's produced a number of videos on his YouTube channel where he's talked about a lot of technical and non-technical aspects relating to Hangouts and video conferencing. So a lot of the information here comes from him and all the many helpful tips and methods that he's produced over time. And I've also watched some videos by another gentleman by the name of Stephen Washer from brainyvideo.com. He also has his own YouTube channel where he's talked about various video recording and video casting things, and the two of them actually produced a couple videos where they talked about a number of tips where they kind of shared it with between themselves and others. So that was pretty informative. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about in this video stems from the conversations they've had with each other, from other tips they've had on their website, as well as what I've experienced over the last year. And these are things I didn't mention in the first video. So these aren't necessarily any less important, but there's a lot of like best practices and tips, etc., that go into making a Hangout video or Skyping with others or video conferencing or podcasting, and I think these are relevant. So let's start with number one. Number one is regarding lighting. And I'll kind of go back to what I had mentioned in my previous video where I basically have lamps in front of me and I don't have lamps behind me, or particularly in video shot. You know, you're not going to see any lights on screen, no lens flare effects, etc., because all the lighting that I have is in front of me. But one of the things Stephen Washer had mentioned in one of his videos is that he likes to have a little bit more lighting on one side than on the other because it casts a little bit more of a shadow, maybe highlighting a jawline, you know, or kind of casting a little bit of more of a warm effect on the person that kind of casts them in a certain light that makes them more visible and stand out. So like shadowing may appear on this side or on this side that helps to separate the person here from back there. So I thought that was very interesting. And number two, this kind of revisits also my previous video where I talked about, you know, trying not to have any reflective surfaces in the shot that might reflect lighting or the monitor or anything that's in front of you onto that and projecting it back onto the screen. A classic example would be a pair of glasses. If you're looking at glasses and you're looking at a screen, or maybe multiple screens or multiple lamps, and all that casts on your glasses and casts back towards the camera, that can be a little bit of a jarring experience. Well, if anything, and I may not have focused on it well enough in the last video, but it's not necessarily a problem to have anything that's reflective or anything like glasses, so long as you're trying to, you know, just try to minimize the impact that lighting has on it. Try to reduce that reflectivity. So I don't want to give anyone the wrong impression that I don't want anyone to wear glasses in a hangout or in video conferencing. But I think it would be very important to just try to, you know, instead of having like a white light bulb show on screen, you know, have like lights that are soft and non that are kind of diffused to where it minimizes the sharp glare, off your glasses or anything that might be reflective, in the shot. And there are also some good comments by Stephen Washer with regard to like having your head back, have your chin down, and then your face straight. It's not so much where you're like doing this kind of deal, or off to the side, or you're kind of, whatever you want to or you don't want to just present the wrong image. Like I've seen a lot of people doing Hangouts where they're basically looking like this at the screen, and that's not as appealing as basically kind of looking back and having the head up a little bit, and kind of putting yourself upright, and looking straight at the screen. So I thought that was good advice. Try to be upright yet still look at the screen. And this actually carries into advice number 4 regarding eye contact. Like I'm looking at basically the top third of my monitor, which the webcam is just above. So it kind of looks like I'm not looking directly at the webcam. If I'm looking at the webcam here, it's different than looking here. But if I'm looking here, it tends to be a good eye line in terms of what I'm looking at. Now, when you're participating in a Hangout, you're going to see that when you're looking at the screen and you're looking at, the person on the other end, generally if you look at them and not so much at the film strip or what's down at the bottom, it's a different experience. So try to look, kind of towards where the camera is, but at the very minimum at the middle of above the middle, but around the top third of the screen, and looks straight on. And another bit of advice, that I could recommend to others is you want to basically speak to, at a minimum, like the camera, like speak to the camera or the screen itself. Try to project your voice, beyond, a lot of people have the tendency to think, oh, I'm on a smartphone, so I'll basically talk like this, and they're communicating with the person there. But you want to sort of project your voice to where it's carrying at least to the screen or the monitor itself, or even preferably beyond it, as if you're talking to the person on the other end of a Hangout. If you imagine that you're, say, 3 or 4 feet in front of your monitor, and then the person behind you is a few feet on the other end of the monitor, on the the distance between their monitor or their webcam and themselves, try to speak up to that point. Try to project your voice when possible. And number 6, this is almost an unwritten rule, it seems. I never really see this in too many videos, but you want to always try to smile if possible. Or even if you don't always smile per se, you try to be positive or try to inject something, that has a little bit of energy to it, positive energy, to where you're, presenting that to others. You don't want to basically be dour and mean and depressing, in the video. You want to basically smile and not just have a good attitude, but try to express that to others. So, some people will be angry, for example, in a video, and the point is that they're angry, so that's what they're presenting. But generally, if you're in a Hangout and you're chatting with others about some other issues, you don't necessarily have to be negative so much. So it helps a lot just to smile when possible, because that tends to uplift you, but others participating in the Hangout or the video conferencing, etc., and that carries also on to your audience. So when possible, try to smile. And number 7, which should sort of carry on from number 6, is try to show your persona, show your personality, show you. When you're podcasting or hanging out or doing any sort of video conferencing, you tend to have to project more. You tend to try to sort of accentuate how you would normally act, to try to carry that onto the screen, because just having a very bland conversation doesn't promote the conversation as much. And you want to try to have a more upbeat or more energetic, or more, you want to try to show that personality. I hope I'm making this clear. You want to, this is your moment in the sun. This is your moment in front of the camera, in front of others, where you're essentially publicly speaking. And this is the moment to make what you believe in, what you feel, what you think count. This is that moment in time where you get to finally let it all hang out. You finally get to tell others what you've been thinking, maybe all day or all week, etc. So try to have that sort of sense of, I don't know, energy about you in terms of just show your persona, show your personality, let others see you for who you want them to see. You want to carry that out to where others see you the way you want them to look at you. So hope that makes sense. I know it seems a little vague, but at any point in time you can kind of mill about the day, drive to work, walk to class, go hang out, be going from one place to another. Maybe you might be more reserved at that point, but at the moment you're on camera, you're on air, this is that time to have fun with being you and show that to others. And this yet alone continues to point number 8. Don't be boring. This, let the time that you're on air, that you're on screen count. You don't want to necessarily be effectively counting sheep on air. You want to effectively be explaining something that maybe others may not know, or maybe they don't know what to think about some issue, or maybe they're lacking some information, or you just found out something that you have to tell the world. This is that time to just let it go. Don't be boring. Don't sit here and essentially read articles word for word and blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't be boring. If you want people to watch you, they need to have something to watch. They might be bored throughout the day, and this is what they do that piques their interest in what you're talking about, either technology or cooking or class or gaming or anime or movies or comics or whatever you're talking about. This is the time to just go for it and have that impact. Try to make that impact on others. So I think if you're not carrying that charisma out to others, you can basically appear as boring. That's something I have to deal with because I'm a fairly boring guy in real life, but I have things I want to talk about, and I have a hard time switching gears, and that may be the case for others. So try not to be boring. Try to just I'm not sure I can better explain it. Just try not to be boring. Tip number 9 is try to relate to others in the Hangout as well as to your audience. Many of the people that watch the Hangout that you are doing either live or after the fact may share similar interests, or they may have dissimilar interests, but they're interested in hearing your side of the story. Or maybe someone is trying to compile an argument for a case that they're making, and they want to look at your video for one reason, or the other. In my opinion, this is the time where you try to relate to others in the Hangout, to either try to express your beliefs, opinions, or relate that information that you have to others in such a way that it matters to them. So you want to try to, make your interests relevant to them, or the Hangout itself is probably relevant to your interests. So you want to basically share what you have with others. And if someone shares what they have, or they relate their experiences or information, maybe you have your own opinion on what they're saying, or it's relevant to you in some ways, or maybe it's not relevant to you, or maybe you have a differing opinion. This is something you can do to basically relate to others in the Hangout and to your audience itself. Number 10, try to eliminate dead silence. A lot of the Hangouts that go on have audio versions only, or they have podcasts, where there's only MP3 versions available for people to download or to stream. So they're not watching any video. And a lot of times, even if you're doing something interesting on screen, or you're showing something on screen like a graphic, or you're waiting for someone to say something after you're done saying something, a lot of times there can be dead air. Either there can be, like, say, lag on the part of one or more people in the Hangout, and so they may not hear the end of a sentence when it occurs. They may hear it a few seconds later, so that can cause dead silence. But other times it can be someone's distracted, and maybe they're not listening, and they don't notice when person A has finished their sentence, so that person B can interject something. A lot of times some people just don't have anything to say about the issue, or maybe there's a question that's raised and no one has an answer. You want to try to eliminate dead silence, because it can cause a bit of a disconcerting experience for others. I've had that experience myself, where person A is on the podcast and they're saying something and say, hold on one moment, and then everyone else is quiet. Well, if they're having an audio only version of the podcast, that means the person that's listening, maybe they're listening to it while they're driving to work, or they're driving, from one point to another, and then they hear this dead silence. They're wondering, well, what just happened? So if at all possible, try to be able and willing to interject something if there's a pause for some reason, an uncomfortable pause where maybe a few seconds have gone by and nothing else is being said. Maybe you can interrupt, like maybe this person has been saying something for 2 minutes and you've been wanting to interrupt, and all of a sudden they abruptly stop. Well, this is the point in time you then want to say what you want to say. So try to eliminate those uncomfortable pauses in audio. And number 11, I would say try to observe yourself as often as possible, not just on Hangouts themselves, like obviously you're looking at yourself and others while you're podcasting, but maybe watch the Hangout afterwards and maybe focus in particular on yourself in terms of, at this point in time I did this, and at another point in time I did that. How can you change the experience next time, to where when maybe you kind of dazed off and did this for too long in a video, maybe next time you can tell yourself mentally, okay, try not to do that again, or you abruptly leave to get something. Maybe next time you can like click on the video off button to where it shows your avatar, to where you can, and then mute your audio to where you can go up, maybe answer a doorbell, or someone's asking you a question, and then you can kind of go away from the video long enough to do that, to where you're not a distraction. This is in particular for someone that's watching the video, but try to observe yourself after the fact and see maybe any mistakes you might have made, or maybe some things you did which you may not have wanted to do with some additional hindsight. So watch yourself in subsequent videos. Also, if you're making solo video, like if you're recording to later upload to YouTube, watch what you have done a few times before you upload it, so you can get a better idea of, well, maybe the next time I do this kind of video I won't do that. So just try to observe yourself when possible, because practice makes perfect, and you can kind of experience or re-experience something after the fact just by watching yourself. Number 12, try to keep the microphone itself out of the shot. Like, you can't see it, but my microphone is actually right here, and it's just out of the shot. I've seen some people where the microphone is like literally a huge portion of the screen, or it's like just off screen, and like maybe they hit something and it vibrates and it causes something, or it's too close, it's like right down here, or maybe in some cases like right out here. If at all possible, if you can adjust it, try to get the microphone just off screen, one way or the other, or if it's up there. Now a lot of people, they'll use a webcam mic, and so the microphone is on the webcam, so it's automatically out of the shot. Or they're using a notebook where the webcam's up here and the microphone is somewhere else down there. If that's what you're resorting to, then that pretty much eliminates that issue. But I've seen a number of people where they're holding the microphone, and like in my case, I have a blue snowball mic that has a red LED on the top. I've seen some people where like they're holding the mic in front of themselves, and there's the shine off the red LED is hitting their face. And that can be a little kind of weird or a little distracting. And I would just say, if at all possible, particularly if there's any sort of light involved on the microphone, try to keep the microphone just out of camera shot if possible. One of the pieces of advice that I like a lot from actually Stephen Washer from brandingvideo.com, he had mentioned that, since a lot of people use like a set of headphones, when they're on air, he likes to in particular have like an earbud run around, like behind him. Like instead of wearing an earbud, this way, or wearing a big old headset, he likes to have a single earbud in his ear, and he like tilts his head. So like right now, I've got an earbud in one of my ears and nothing in this ear, and my face is slightly tilted, and you wouldn't know that I'm listening to audio from here rather than say a set of speakers. But in reality, you've got an earbud here that you're listening to, and some people, they'll run it behind them, or they'll run it in their shirt, and they'll move it around towards the PC or wherever they've got it connected to, but it doesn't show up as much. So now I'm going to show you, here's how I normally use this whenever I'm podcasting. Like me personally, I don't go to that lengths, But I do believe that everyone should wear a headphone or a headset or earphones when possible. But I do this at least, and I use a black set of earbuds as opposed to like white or neon green or yellow or hot pink. And I tend to wear not white clothes, but a little bit dark. Like right now I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt because it's my day off and I'm just doing a video. So this isn't so bad, but you may consider getting just one earbuds and run it behind you. I could, in theory, run this behind me in some capacity and minimize the effect of having earbuds. But me personally, I like using a set of earbuds in a Hangout, and I just kind of make them, if possible, not stand out, or I just don't worry about it. And number 14, I'm going to go ahead and get these out of my ear. But number 14, if you're on, say, a tablet or a smartphone, what you might do is instead of, if you're going to participate in Hangout, instead of participating like this with the smartphone up in a vertical position, participate like this where it's widescreen. It'll actually show widescreen on the video whenever it's your time to be on screen. Too many people will participate in a Hangout because they're talking on the phone like this, because I guess it's more comfortable. But realistically, just hold it like this or something, and do the Hangout that way in a widescreen version, especially if you're on like a tablet. Like here's my little Nexus 7. Try to, if possible, hold it widescreen so that the video looks better. I'm not a fan of video or even pictures that are taken like this. I'm a fan of video and pictures that are taken like that. So that's generally what I recommend. And number 15, if at all possible, silencing sort of phones, alarms, tablets, etc. Me personally, when I get on a Hangout, just before I do that, I set my smartphone onto airplane mode. It just completely shuts it off for an hour and gives me a break, so I don't have to worry about any sort of beeps or buzzes or anything that might distract me, or make audio that distracts the audience, like they're going, I wonder who's buzzing or what's going on there. You want to try to eliminate it as a distraction. Number 16, and continuing on the theme of eliminating distractions, if at all possible, mute your audio when you're done talking. Like if you're gonna go into a 2-minute diatribe on one thing or the other, let it rip. But when you're done and you want others to respond, or maybe someone has their diatribe in progress, mute the audio so that you don't accidentally bump something or cough or interject something that switches the screen from them to you. If you're actually controlling the Hangout, you can actually click your image and lock the image on yourself, or click someone else and lock the image on them. But most people that do Hangouts don't bother manually clicking on whoever they want the focus is for the Hangout video. So in my opinion, if you're done, you're going to take a break, or you have to go answer the doorbell, or someone's asking you a question, mute your audio so that whatever is going on in your world doesn't distract from the intended purpose of the Hangout itself. And number 17, I sort of mentioned this in the previous video, that you can shut down certain unneeded or unwanted programs before joining a Hangout or starting a Hangout. You can also alternatively, and this is my tip, reboot your computer or notebook or tablet before you podcast, just to sort of clear everything. A lot of us, we leave our computers or tablets or smartphones on for days, weeks, or theoretically even months at a time. And over time, things can kind of get corrupt, or there's maybe some memory leakage that occurs, or maybe some programs don't work as well as they should, or maybe you just need to reboot and let some updates occur. Whatever the case is, in my opinion, before you start a Hangout, you may want to just start with a clean slate. Sometime during the day, maybe reboot the computer, the tablet, or whatever, and then closer to that moment in time where you're going to actually partake in the Hangout, then you can close any sort of unneeded apps, programs, windows, etc. that you may have running in the background. And number 18, this is regarding a bug that sometimes happens in Hangouts, but it could occur in other video conferencing software, programs. Basically, is there's a bug sometimes I see where I join a Hangout and I'm not outputting video. A lot of times that occurs because I've actually started the camera beforehand, just kind of view and maybe orient the screen, etc. And then I close it down. I adjust the positioning of the screen to make sure everything's cropped, etc. And then I close it down, or I may just forget that I had it running beforehand and then turn it off, and then I'll join a Hangout. Well, the resources are tied up, and I'm not displaying video in the Hangout. So I've noticed that, like, I'll join a Hangout and people can't see me. Maybe they're just seeing my avatar or they're seeing black, and this may change on different versions of Hangouts over time, or the video conferencing software. What you can do is turn off the camera, either in the Hangouts or the video software or somewhere else, and then turn it back on, and that can reset everything to where video occurs again. Or worst case, you may exit the Hangout and then rejoin. So if you have that sort of weird issue where you join a Hangout and you don't have video, or you notice someone else doesn't have video, maybe have you or them stop their camera and then restart it within Hangouts and see if that makes video come back. Failing that, leave the program, then come back in. And then failing that, going back to my previous tip, maybe even reboot your computer and then try again. Or even check connections on the camera. Number 19, be prepared. You want to have notes handy for you. In many times, if you're joining a Hangout, you may also have like a Google shared doc or some sort of shared rundown or working list of topics. You want to have that basically handy so that you and others can basically go through the show notes or whatever you call them, before, so you kind of get an idea what you and the others are going to talk about, but also you can update it during the podcast or the Hangout. So definitely try to have some sort of notes or spreadsheet or document, handy, where you can kind of refer to that over time. And actually, to kind of carry on along that, you want to basically have kind of an outline of what you want to talk about. For example, in the podcast that I do with others, we tend to have this Google Doc set up beforehand, and we basically have a list of topics, not necessarily in a specific order, but they may be arranged in a certain order based on like hardware or software or whatever. And you can kind of, throughout the Hangout, based on how it goes, you can sort of skip here and there as needed. But it's nice to have an outline where you basically have either the title of maybe an article that you're reading, or like specifically what you want to say, that maybe one sentence line in terms of here's a summary of this topic, and then you maybe have a link or two to the article that's listed, or maybe something else, like you're referring to a video game, you might have a link to that video game, for example. So, or if you have referring to a website, you might have a link to that website, for example, in the rundown. So you want to basically have this sort of outline beforehand. Number 20, you want to be an authority. You want to have a reason why others are watching you. Like, if you don't know anything about cooking, the last thing you want to do is join a cooking Hangout and essentially try to voice your opinion on cooking if you don't know what you're talking about. You want to have a reason for others to basically listen to you. So, like, try to speak about issues which you are like an authority about, or you're very knowledgeable. You want others to basically have a reason to watch you, a reason to listen to you, because what you have to say is important. What you have to say moves the needle, or has an impact, or is thoughtful or worthwhile. It's related to what you guys are talking about. So that's just another bit of advice, if at all possible, if you're going to bother saying something about something, or if you're going to, alternatively, you can just ask about something if you don't know. But generally speaking, if you're going to be positing a theory or presenting facts or presenting opinions, you want to essentially be an authority on the material at hand. That helps. Number 21, if at all possible, try to leave ego behind. You don't necessarily have to, win every argument, or boss people around in the Hangout, or make snarky, mean remarks, necessarily, because a lot of times that may be meant, in jest or with goodwill, but it can be perceived on the other end of the conversation as being mean or critical, or maybe a little bit too hard on them, because it's different than if you and a person are just hanging out talking with each other and no one else is watching or listening, and you may have the ability to sort of joke and be mean to each other in that sort of private kind of experience. But when you're on air and others are in the conversation, and then many others potentially are watching the conversation or listening to it after the fact, it's probably not the best time to be mean or or discouraging to others, or hard on others, or joking in a bad way, or mean or anything like that. You want to basically try to tone that down, because it can make others defensive or upset or unnecessarily hurt, or they may be caught off guard. That's the last thing I expect. So basically try not to be an asshole to others, if you're going to be in a hangout. And number 22, last but not least, and I would say this is arguably one of the more important points, is forget about being perfect. Everyone's going to make mistakes. They're going to slur a word here and there, or they're going to say a word wrong, or they're going to miscommunicate, or they're going to forget about something, or maybe they'll transpose one name for another, or one product for another, or something. It could be anything. So a lot of times people will just downright goof in a hangout, and it happens. And the main thing is to let it slide. Just try to have a good attitude about it. Try to have a good attitude about others that make mistakes. Try to help them out. Everyone's going to make mistakes. Don't worry about being perfect. Try to relax and enjoy yourself. This is the moment in time you're hanging out with others, ostensibly to have fun, but also to relate information to others. Sometimes you're going to make a mistake, or even make an uncouth joke, or you're just going to say something that may inadvertently offend someone, or maybe you will purposely say something that will offend someone. Now's the time to realize sometimes people do stupid stuff, even yourself, and just come to terms with it, get over it, whatever. The main thing, in my opinion, is realize you're part of a team, for lack of a better sense, on a hangout. Work well with others. Pick up where someone falls, help them up when that occurs. If someone makes a mistake, help them out. If you make a mistake, hopefully the others will help you. You're not here to be 100% perfect and accurate and on point all the time without fail. It just doesn't happen. We're all human. It's part of the human experience. Don't be perfect. Don't expect it. You're not going to be perfect. Don't get upset with others that are not perfect, and just come to terms with it. Well, guys, that's my 22 latest Hangout tips. I know it's a lot to listen to, and I was a little bit disorganized, I felt, in terms of talking about the issues, but I'm trying not to, read from a document word for word. I've had the tendency in the past, when trying to give out advice in videos or whatever, where I'm focused on making sure I read everything, and I don't want to do that. So this is just me kind of winging it off the cuff on a day off, just kind of letting more Hangouts. I have all these points written down, 22 points. I want to make sure that I get them across. But as I kind of mentioned in that last point, this is not a perfect experience, but I'm hoping that a lot of the information that I've related helps you or anyone else into maybe doing Hangouts better. Maybe not everything that I've suggested works for you, or is how your Hangout or video conference or podcast is supposed to be done. Maybe you have a unique style or flair that certain elements of what I've suggested in this video and the previous video just doesn't just doesn't relate to, and that's fine. But I'd say, by and large, a lot of the tips that I've presented in this video and the previous one will help a lot of people, and maybe in the very least give you a different point of view in terms of how you may want to run your Hangout. Maybe as you go and look past previous Hangouts that you've done or that others have done, you can kind of say, what, maybe I might try something different here, or maybe adjust something. So that's basically it, guys. One thing I want to mention is Ronnie Benser from thehangouthelper.com. That's the gentleman, and his website, thehangouthelper.com. Also Ronnie Benser on Google Plus and YouTube. And then there's Stephen Washer from brainyvideo.com, and I believe his YouTube channel is Brainy Video. If not, you can look for Stephen Washer and or Brainy Video, one word, in the YouTube, and you can search him out as well. Many of these tips have come directly from them or have spawned off from discussions they've had, and they really hit home with me, and I felt they needed to be presented to others. And I'd planned for months to had some of these tips already, but I wanted to percolate, let them percolate between the time I made my last video and this one, and so that's basically it. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and the previous Hangouts video. Hope you have a great day. Thank you.